NWO Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Logan Bailey.
Welcome to the NWO Sports Podcast, football edition, brought to you by our primary sponsor, 3Chord. I'm your host, Logan Bailey, and joined again today by Keith Brown, Tony Fairchild, and AJ Fairchild. So thanks again for coming on the show, guys.
Yes, sir.
Yep. Well, it is now the playoffs, round 2, in Ohio High School Athletic Association. So what are you guys' thoughts going into this week? A lot of big games on the slate, and a lot of teams still in the area for Northwest Ohio. So,
I mean, every game gets bigger as you go here. From here on out, every game is a bigger game, and there's more on the line, obviously, because you win or you're out now. So, just gets more interesting as we go through this. But
everything gets bigger. Every penalty's magnified. Your crowds get bigger as you advance. It's everything, like Coach Fairchild said, everything's just bigger as a whole. So,
I think one thing, too, kind of looking at last week, is I think some of the games really showed that there is somewhat of like a justification for some of these seeds that are 8 and below. Like, you look at Tinora, ended up winning a big game as the 10 seed, Defiance, which they were the 13 seed. So I thought that was also pretty interesting looking at last week. So I still think 16 is a little too many, but again, I think it kind of verifies that some of these teams that are beyond the 8 seed, which is what it previously was for playoffs, can go out and compete and beat some of these teams. So
it's like, just like you see in the college basketball tournament, there's always a 15 seed that beats a 2 seed. So it's kind of just, can you pick the right one? But yeah, it's just Defiance going in and knocking off Cloverleaf the way they did was kind of a shocker to everybody. And I'm sure Tinora beating Highland was a kind of a shocker to some people as well. But just like Keith was saying, is you go bigger, you play at different stadiums, and this week they still have home games, right? Everybody's still at home, the higher seeds at home, and now next week you start traveling to neutral sites. But which was funny last week when we were traveling down, we passed the bus going the other direction. It was kind of like what, but yeah. So you travel. I looked at Defiance is traveling far again. They're playing in Mansfield. So they're like literally 15 minutes where we were at last week.
Yeah, another long bus ride there. So yeah, and I think too, we were kind of talking at work too, and just how unique football is, especially with playoffs, because you look at all the other sports and there's a district or a sectional for everything else. And we were talking about travel time and this and that, and it's like, it'd be kind of unique to see if there was actually like a district set up for football, and then you move on to the region. Yeah. And so I thought that was just kind of interesting. We brought that up at work, and we're kind of discussing that a little bit. So, that definitely explains why you're having 2.5 hour drives, because you think about baseball, basketball, whatever, softball, that those games in your district are typically teams that are right around your area, and you get to play those closer games. But nonetheless, it was a good road trip for us.
Yeah, had a good time.
We had a good time.
It's definitely a blast. So,
and it just, like I said, everything just gets a little bit bigger. You're trying to keep the kids calm down and keep them focused on, listen, nothing changes. What we got to do, our game plan is the same. Try not to get caught up in all the hoopla that's going on around you as you travel. Logan, you know this firsthand. So, and AJ, you do too. We went to the state baseball tournament too. So just try to stay focused where you're playing, and just do your job.
Yep, exactly. So, all right. Well, let's go ahead. Let's look at how we did for last week's picks here, and it's kind of a surprising one who ended up leading us all last week, and that was Bryce. So he ended up going 16-2, and the only game he had different was the Delphus Jefferson versus Ayersville game, and he had Delphus Jefferson picked. And that was a game we talked about too. Is it's tough to beat teams twice in the same season, especially in the playoffs, and Bryce was able to get that one. So he ended up taking a 1-game advantage on everyone else last week. So Bryce is still he's still in 5th though with a 159-56 record, but he gained one more game on us. But looking at some of the others, other than that, everything stays the same. AJ's still in 1st at 172-43 record. Keith is in 2nd at 171-44 record. Myself and Tony are tied in 3rd at 164-51 record. So that rounds out how we've been doing for picks, and maybe this week we'll see if anyone can gain a couple more games. So
I gotta give Bryce the kudos. He rode that Archbold train all the way to the station right there.
He did. Yeah. I don't think Archbold could have been facing the I don't even know, Cleveland Browns, and he would have picked the Archbold Blue Streak. So unfortunately didn't pay off, but we all had Archbold pick last week. So All right, looking at the next section here, looking at round 1 playoff game recaps, and we're going to look at the NWO Sports Game of the Week from round 1 of the playoffs, and that was a game that we were at and we traveled to almost 2.5 hours to, so it was quite the ride for us. But it was Tinora at Highland, and Tinora ended up winning that one big, 37-7. And we were able to see it firsthand as Tenora's defense is legit, and they proved to be dominant, especially the front seven. Their defensive line and linebackers, they played probably one of the better games I've seen all year, especially when they played against a star running back that Highland had, Dane Nauman. I mean, going into that game, he had almost 2,300 rushing yards, 27 rushing touchdowns, and Tenora's defensive front held him to just 30 rushing yards and no scores before the JV came in. So I thought that was very impressive. You look at some guys like Dallas Dockenhouse, Javen Gaines, Graham Askins, Taryn Ward, Junior Bone, looking at those defensive linemen who really took up those blockers and allowed for some of the linebackers of Tinora to make plays and fill those gaps. But those guys up front, their efforts did not go unnoticed because they made a big difference in that game. So what were your guys' thoughts on this game, the Tinora at Highland game?
Kind of talked about it with Keith a little bit before the podcast started here. I wasn't entirely surprised to see Tinora shut down a running back like this. We kind of saw something similar against LCC in the beginning of the year. Their quarterback, I forget where he was at in stats, but he had about 1,000 yards rushing at the time, and was a fantastic quarterback. But it was kind of one-dimensional. We keep talking about that throughout the season. Very one-dimensional offense, and Tinora shut it down, no problem. And they came out, this past week here. Again, another team that had a one-dimensional offense, shut it down and held them to 30 yards. A player that's had an average of, I think it was like 260 yards a game, somewhere around there, for the last 4 or 5 games, and then he's held to 30 yards. So I'm not surprised to see Tinora do that to him. Definitely going to be interesting seeing them go forward and see how they handle a team like Elmwood, where they're a little more multi-dimensional, but it's going to be a lot of fun for the next week or two.
Yeah, I agree. It was I'm kind of speechless, really. I mean, the first drive, I think they limited him to -3 yards. Tinora came back. First offensive play, Cole Anders took about 76 yards for a touchdown. You're like, well, we got the train rolling here. Second drive, Tenora's defense, same. Come out, just kind of smashed Nauman around a little bit, hit him in the shins and the ankle area. Yeah. Didn't try and tackle him up high, because I think probably watching the game tape, that if you go high on him, as we saw several times, you're probably going to be laying on your back looking up at the stadium lights.
He was a huge back. I believe he was 6 foot, 215 pounds, which that's a big back for high school football. Yeah. So, go ahead, Keith. I was just wanting to add on that.
You guys can go ahead and jump in. It's it was. Just kept waiting for him to get going, and he just never did until it was too late. Once, as AJ said, the reserves were already in, and Rams defense. I was actually trying to think back of one of the more outstanding performances as far as a Tinora defense, like in the last 5-6 years, and this probably has to be a top 1 or 2 performance, really.
They just literally dominated Highland defense. They just dominated them. They couldn't get anything going, and I know Highland was playing with their freshman quarterback, because their starter got hurt, but I don't know how much that really affected the game, but. So it kind of made them a lot more one-dimensional than what they already were, I think. But I got the biggest thing that I looked at Friday night was the hitting. Tinora was they obviously watched the game film, like Keith said. They were blowing up the ankles and the shins, but it wasn't necessarily the first guy. It was the second, third, fourth guy come flying in there, and man, they were just knocking people around. And which you have to do against a back like that. He ran for 2,300 yards. He's gonna break some tackles, obviously. And man, they got in there and got his feet. And man, the next guy was right there, right now. You saw a bunch of green hats around the football, and it's what you got to have with a running back like that. He was a beast, and we kind of joked around and saw him. On the kickoffs, we always joke around about Grady Gusweiler. They're flying downfield and blowing people up, but he kind of ran into a wall Friday night that one time going downfield, and Nauman kind of pancaked him a little bit. But a great performance by the Rams defense. But what really is surprising me more than anything else is the offense. Dominic Graziani, you guys talked about it last week. I wasn't there against Hicksville, but seeing him play, I mean, just his level of play has gone tenfold from when I saw him. I mean, he just looks more comfortable. The pass that he threw to Gus Weiler in the end zone was, and I mentioned this Friday night, was probably one of the best passes I've seen by a Tinora quarterback in a long time. He just kept his eyes downfield.
He actually kind of threw him open in a way because he wasn't open initially, and then just kind of was waiting for him to get there, and he just on a line.
How far would you say that pass was?
I believe he threw it from the
50-yard line, probably?
I would probably say it was at least a good 50 yards in the air on a line.
Yeah, well, I think he was standing on the 50 and threw it deep in the threw it into the end zone, so 50, 55 yards. I mean, but just that play right there really stood out to me that, and no disrespect to Gavin Eckert, but Gavin would have tucked that ball because nobody was open right away, and Gavin would have tucked it and ran, and Dominic just kind of kept rolling out, looking, and then just let it fly. And then you look down there and you see Gus Weiler, and I'm like, holy crap. It was that was a great play. But I really, really thought we were going to miss Brandon Edwards. He was hurt. But
had a bunch of key players step up for the Rams, too.
Andrews taking the very first carry of the game to the house. What more could you ask for from somebody to step up? And just a great all-around game.
And there's a couple more things I wanted to add. You had a couple very good points. One in Dominic Graziani. I think his vision down the field has vastly improved because, like you said, too, go back a couple weeks ago and he would look at his first read the whole way and hit it, and if not, he would either try to run it, scramble, or try to burn it out of bounds. Now you get him looking at one. If that's not there, he's keeping and working through the progressions down the field. And we saw that he hit Grady Gusweiler for a deep ball down the field. And that was something that really impressed us because in high school football, you typically don't see a lot of quarterbacks that will work through your progressions. A lot of them panic right away and they don't know what to do with the ball. But he just looked so comfortable doing it too. And that was something I was really impressed with.
And let's not forget about the play that didn't actually count when he threw the pass to Caden Razik. I believe he was on the near side hash mark and threw it in the far corner end zone. And boy, he got a I mean, that seriously was the catch of the year, even though it looked like he caught it.
The referee was there right away. So the only thing I could think is maybe it went through his hands. But boy, when he rolled over, he had control. But maybe it went through his hands and hit the ground, and he kind of pulled it up. But I agree with you.
The effort on it, the throw, the diving catch, or almost catch, like the effort on both ends, fantastic.
That was a play of the year if that had been complete. That was just a awesome play, like you said, Keith. It was
looking at total stats, Rams had basically 360 yards of total offense to 150. I mean, if you would have told.
And half of those were garbage yards and stats at the end of the game.
I would say, they got probably about 60, 70 yards in the last 4 minutes.
I would say,
we basically held them under 100 yards of total offense when
they ran.
First team was in there.
He had 70 yards. Nauman had 70 yards after the JVers went in. I counted that up before, going through the play-by-play, but yeah.
And you said earlier, Tony, too, I really like that statement, is you could tell Highland was very one-dimensional. When you have a running back that has 2,300 rushing yards going into the game, and they didn't, though they did have a backup quarterback and a freshman, you could tell they just went into panic mode instantly because they didn't know what to do when they were down in that situation because we talk about it time and time again. Once you get to the playoffs, you got to have somewhat of a little bit of a balance because if you eliminate one, and like we saw it firsthand against Highland, your rushing attack's not there, you got to go to something else because obviously that's not working, and Highland just didn't have anything to resort to. So
and that's with Tinora with Dominic Graziani coming in with the injury to Eckert. You look at Tenora's season, and looking at who they play this week. Tinora is an entirely different team than what they were week 4, 5, 6. Just an entirely different team. I mean, and we thought they were good then, especially defensively. We talked about their defense, and now what do we talk about? 90% of the season, offense, sputter. Well, I think they got it running.
No doubt. Yep, absolutely. The defense is actually playing better than like you said, what it has all year. So,
looking at the stats, the one stat that we kind of look at all the time, and it really. There were actually two stats. The one was the third down conversions. Kind of really surprised me. Highland was 2 of 13 on third downs, and we talked about Tinora being able to get off the field on third down, but they struggled against that with the Antwerp. You would have thought with somebody like Dane Nauman, just let them punch the ball, you know. But the one thing I do remember is that Highland was third and long a lot.
Yes, they were.
Yeah, they were playing behind the sticks for much of the game, and even like you said too, even on those third downs, they did give it to Nallman, but he was stuffed right away. Like Tinora was ready because they know in those crunch time moments you're going to need to give it to your superstar, and he just wasn't able to convert on those.
You know, and Dockenhouse and Askins did a great job on the outside, keeping him contained. And you know, we've talked about our linebackers filling and flowing to the football, and those guys would force him back up and didn't let him get out there where he could get into space, because I mean, when we saw a few times he did get second level, and he's hard to bring down once he gets moving.
That was another big kudos why I gave it to the defensive line, because we saw him get to those linebackers, and it's hard to tackle a kid that's 6 foot 215 running with a full head of steam, and but most of the time he was able to be slowed down because those defensive linemen were clogging up holes or getting a hand on him here or there or making a tackle.
I always joked around about they were all biting at his ankles the whole time, and everybody else was coming. But the other stat I wanted to bring up, that the one thing, if Tenora's got to correct one thing this week, is the penalties. The penalties. We had, you know, it says here 10, but I'm pretty sure that we had 11 or 12, because I think there was one or two after that. But you know, a lot of those were false starts and offsides. We talk about controlling the controllables. That's stuff that you can control.
Exactly.
And the one time was it was on fourth down. We jumped off sides and gave, it was fourth and 1 or 4th and 6, and then they jumped off sides, gave them a 4th and 1. So then they brought their offense back on. So, you know, stuff like that can be game changers if we're not careful. So that's the one thing that Tinora definitely has to clean up this coming week.
Yeah, they can't afford that against Elmwood. They'll make them pay.
Yeah.
One final thought for me, at least. AD over there, Mike Delaney and his staff at Island, they were A++. So yes, thank you, Mike.
Excellent job there.
Yes,
that was definitely a first-class program over there from the athletic department for sure. Let's look at the next game here. Looking at Defiance at Cloverfield, and like we kind of discussed earlier, Defiance I think came out and made a statement in this game. They ended up winning 63-28, and 63 points was the most Defiance has put up all year, and they were led by none other than running back Brogan Castillo, who had a career performance. He had 22 carries, 251 rushing yards, and 5 rushing touchdowns. So I look at that and I was like, oh, they ran that rock that game. So what a job by Brogan and the Defiance team. But something else too is Defiance came out of the strong from the gates, and they put up 21 points in the first quarter, which is excellent to see. And when you can jump out on a team early, especially in the playoffs, that's tough to come back from. So excellent job again by their offense that game. I also like how Defiance was disciplined during the game with just 5 penalties, almost the opposite of what we heard from Tinora. Defiance had just 5 penalties for 60 yards, and that's one thing you can do during the playoffs. And like Tony said, control the controllables. If you can cut down on your penalties, that's just something that's going to help improve your chances, and most of the time they can be avoided. So what are your guys' thoughts on this Defiance at Cloverfield game?
For me, it was a shocker. I mean, Defiance came out, in my opinion, and played the game of the year for them. I mean, they just had everything running on all cylinders. And, you know, congrats to Brogan for putting together a great game. And then, you know, anytime you come out and you throw 21 points up in the first quarter, it kind of, you know, puts the other team back on the heels. Like, man, what in the, obviously we didn't look at game film correctly or something. You know what I mean?
Which is funny you say that, because Brogan Castillo was sitting, I believe it was 996 going into that game.
Oh, yeah,
total yards for the offense. We talked about that on the way down to our game. So he wasn't slouching by any means.
No.
So for them to, you know, kind of overlook that or whatever happened there, congratulations to Brogan. That's a huge accomplishment. I know it seems like for us this year, we've been talking about a lot of running backs breaking that mark. Yeah. But regardless, it's still a heck of a milestone to hit for any running back. So congratulations to you, Brogan.
Yeah, just for me personally, as we talked about on the way back, which Coach Fairchild's like a stat nerd, he said Defiance was 2 of 4 on third down. Like, if you're Coach Cooper and the staff and the players, you just have to be ecstatic about that. You've only had 4 third downs in the entire game. And even more impressive to me was 530 yards of total offense, and they did that in time of possession was 1838.
Wow.
So they had 530 yards in just under 19 minutes of possession time. That's, you know, and that's impressive.
And you know, only having 4 third downs, and you look at, that's why they scored 63 points, because they were just marching down the field. You know,
yes.
See, you know, Zippo had a pass to Christian Camaso for a touchdown. Had another one to Craig Nichols for a touchdown. I mean, sounds like to me they were doing it all. So,
well, something too I look at here, and they even were pulling out some deep in the playbook. They had a wide receiver pass from Brian Phillips to Camaso, and that's something going deep in the playbooks. And once you get to playoffs, you got to pull out those sometimes. So it's good to see them open up the playbook, and obviously they did with totaling 530 yards, which is probably one of the more better offensive performances we've seen out of a Northwest Ohio team all year. So
very, very impressive by Coach Cooper and the Bulldogs. Again, just one punt. So 1 punt and 4 third down attempts. I mean, that's almost a perfect game, honestly.
I mean, and Ziffel was 7 of 12, so he was taking care of the ball too. So let's say he did have an interception, but is that an interception or is that just a turnover? I don't remember. I don't know. Maybe that's maybe it's a touchdown.
Passing touchdowns to interception ratio is 3-1. So yeah, there was an interception in there.
Okay.
But nonetheless, I mean, Defiance, like you guys said, I mean, what a performance. Probably their best performance of the year. And, I mean, you look at Brogan Castillo, and he's just improved week after week after week, and he's definitely another kid that he runs hard down the field, and I definitely wouldn't want to be tackling him if he gets to the second level, that's for sure. So
I had a couple highlights here from Aaron's article. Most points since 2007.
Wow.
And
wasn't their first playoff win since, I think, 2003.
Other than the COVID year, right? 2003, yes.
That's just, again, we've talked about it. What a total turnaround for the Defiance Bulldog program this season. And they get another week in the playoffs this week, and who knows? Maybe they'll come out with another win.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're riding sky high on momentum right now.
Yeah, and we talked about getting hot at the right time, and scoring 63 points in the opening playoff game. I don't really get any hotter than that.
As a quote-unquote underdog, too. I mean, they were the lower-seeded team, and they had a long bus ride. And obviously that bus ride didn't affect a couple teams from around the area in that first round. So let's go ahead. Let's move on to the next game here. Patrick Henry at Ottawa Hills. And this was one that, even though Patrick Henry was the lower seed, we all kind of had Patrick Henry favored in this one. I mean, seeing what they did against Archbold just a few weeks ago. And, I mean, PH has just gone through a gauntlet this year in the NWAL, and that's for any team in that league. And, I mean, their record doesn't necessarily look the best, but they are definitely battle-tested, and that's for sure. And I know we've talked about quarterback Nash Meyer from Patrick Henry a lot this year, but I think we need to give some more credit to the receiving core that they have. And you look at, like, Landon Johnson. He's a junior, another first-team NWAL accolade winner. He was a first-team selection as a sophomore too, which is pretty good in that league. And he had 12 passes this game, or 12 receptions for 138 receiving yards. And you look at Aiden Behrman and Gavin Jackson was a second-team NWAL wide receiver. Both those guys had a combined 8 receptions apiece, and they had a combined 136 receiving yards and 1 receiving touchdown. So your quarterback's only as good as your wide receivers. So those kids deserve just as good of a shout-out as Nash Meyer. So what are your guys' comments on this game?
After talking to Coach Enselman last week, it's you just think about Patrick Henry, and they're doing things right. He's got everything rolling over there, and like you said, the gauntlet of the schedule that they went through is, it does look misleading when you go into the playoffs. There's teams like, they're 6-4, but when you look and you see who you lost to, Liberty Center, Archbold, you look. Which I don't think they lost Archbold, did they? They beat Archbold.
They beat Archbold, yes.
They beat Archbold.
Week 10.
But, you look at who they lost to, you're like, man, the NWAL is probably one of the toughest conferences around, and so it looks deceiving when you see those losses. But like you said, they're there, they're ready to play. It'd be interesting to see what they do. But again, like you said, Logan, the receivers, Coach I was talking about it last week about switching over to that spread offense and airing the ball out a lot more, and Meyer threw the ball 47 times, threw it 49 times last week. So, I mean, look, they're definitely running more of a pro-style offense, throwing the ball.
Keith, AJ?
Yeah, great interview last week, actually, that Logan did with Coach Enselman. Actually went back and re-listened to that a couple times. It was very informative. But, PH offense, just as he talked about last week during his interview, got to adapt to your talent. And, as rough as it was for him, he threw Nash Meyer 49, or was it 47? 47 times again. It's wow, and very productive. So, yeah.
Just Yeah, after listening to Coach Inselman talk about the way he views his team and things like that, it's hard not to get fired up about his team and jump on that bandwagon a little bit. So it's nice to see them pull out that win against Ottawa Hills. They definitely deserve it this year.
They're going to have a tough one this week, though.
Oh, yeah.
They're again, like we said, as you move along, they just get tougher and tougher. No, the teams typically don't get easier as you win.
No, very seldomly.
Let's look at the next game here. Looking at Port Clinton at Liberty Center, and Liberty Center ended up winning that one pretty big, 61-20. A couple points here is that Liberty Center started off slow during the game, finishing the first quarter. They were only leading 14-6, but they picked it up in the second quarter and put up 34 points. So they really turned on the gas and picked up things on the offensive side. Also looking, this game was the most points Liberty Center has scored all season with 61. It was also the second most points their dominant defense has given up all year, which I thought was just as interesting to see there. And the most points given up this season went to Napoleon, who put up 21. So their defense, and a lot of those could have been late in the game as well, but still. And another game that Liberty Center dominated the run game, 432 rushing yards on 43 carries as a team, and they averaged 10 yards a carry. So another excellent performance by the Liberty Center Tigers. So what are your guys' thoughts on this game?
I'm just kind of curious here for me is, how long did the starters stay in the second half, coming out and throwing 34 points up in the second quarter. So you're up, 48 to 6, I don't know, 48 to 13.
Yeah, it's 48-13 at half.
Yeah, so you come out in the third quarter. I'm guessing the starters probably played maybe a series.
Yeah.
But I think that's always a good question too. And we kind of ran into that at the Tinora Highland game. Is when is that right moment to pull out your starters? Because you would hate to see one of those kids go down and with an injury late in the game, which we almost saw a Tinora player do. Yeah, and so I feel like that's always a tough question, especially once you get to playoff time here.
And we actually we talked about that last night with one of the coaches from Tinora, Coach Keim, and he was really adamant about pulling the starters out. And it's one of those. You're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you pull them out and they score, you're like, oh, you gave up the shutout. Yeah, but if you leave them in there and somebody gets hurt, well, then you really look like the idiot, right? I mean,
then you feel terrible.
Then all the fans are like, oh, you gave up the shutout. But then as soon as somebody gets hurt, it's like, why do you have him playing? They should have been playing. You know what I mean? So, it's a fine line you got to walk there. But I thought maybe the defense should have played one more series. But again, like we talked last night, you play one series and somebody rolls up on the back of Javen Keynes' leg and he's out. That changes the defense tremendously. Yep. So, but at Liberty Center, I mean, it just again dominated the game. Their run game just, we'll have to see what they do this week, but they're going to be tough, man. They're just
34 points in the second quarter. I mean, that's just like an explosion there. I mean, wow.
I think it's just crazy to see what they're capable of, too. Like 34 points in one quarter. I don't think some people realize how many points that is in just one quarter. Yeah, that's not even in a half.
Five touchdowns? Probably 5 touchdowns and a missed extra point, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, running clock in the second quarter, man. Right. It's just, how do you score 35? I mean, you're literally, those guys are going running the ball or pass the ball. Maybe they threw the ball a lot.
I mean, they ran the ball. I mean, you look at it running, too. I mean, they were averaging 10 yards a carry, too. So, I mean, you figure every handoff, it's only going to take 10 carries to get down the field. Yeah. So, that's something that was impressive out of them.
Yeah, they had defensive touchdown in the second quarter as well. But still, that's still 4 offensive touchdowns and a defensive score. So,
thing that I got going into this week here with Liberty Center is just the competition level here. Liberty Benton is going to put up a heck of a fight. I think this is going to be their toughest game they've played all year, which rightfully so. You're going into week 2 of playoffs. But kind of looking at how, we'll kind of skipping ahead a little bit here, how Liberty Benton did against Archbold. That game was a little bit of a blowout, a lot like this one, 60-something to, I think, 30. So quite the point differential there. Liberty Benton was able to put up a lot of points against Archbold. The Archbold Liberty Center game was fairly close. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be an interesting fight this week to see how Liberty Center competes against a team like Liberty Benton. But we've been saying it all year. I think whoever kind of comes out of this region here has a very fair shot at winning the state because this is a tough region to be in.
Very much.
All right, let's move on to the next game here. Hardin Northern at Antwerp, and Antwerp won this one big, 43-13. And you look at this, and we have the stats and box score, and it was just another performance by Carson Altimus. Again, totaling 5 touchdowns. He was 16 of 22 for 235 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. And then looking at running the ball, 7 carries for 42 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. But another big name that really he's been doing quite well, honestly, every game is Reed Leachty running the ball. Looking at what he did, is 15 carries, 181 rushing yards. He averaged 12.1 yards a carry, and he added 2 rushing touchdowns. So quite the performance out of him. So overall, I think we knew going in this game, Antwerp is the real deal. We saw them play firsthand this year, and they ended up rolling to a big one here. So what are your guys' thoughts on this first-round matchup of Hardin Northern and Antwerp?
Yeah, for me, Antwerp, they're going to be a tough out. I mean, offensively, they're diverse. Got your running game, your passing game, got your GMC offense and defensive player all on the same team.
Yep.
How many do we count?
Was it 18?
18 all GMC players.
Yep.
So it's Coach Hale's, he's got a heck of a program over there.
Yeah, they're not graduating anybody.
Two seniors. So, I mean, so they're going to be tough out this year, and you don't want to look forward to next year, but for the next couple of years, this got it's a gauntlet there of a program.
Yeah, Antwerp, it's not really a surprise that they did exactly what I thought they would do. I figured they'd go in and handle the first round playoff, and again, it's going to get harder as they go, and just kind of keeping them in check. And I think Coach Hale will do a good job over there. But like you said, Logan Altimus had another great game. At least he ran the ball for almost 200 yards, and anytime you have a running back that's running the ball for almost 200 yards and you're throwing the ball for 200 yards, it's probably going to be a good day.
Yeah.
So, but.
And another big thing is Antwerp doesn't turn the ball over. You look, there's no interceptions, no fumbles. It's clean slate across the turnovers.
Right. Yep.
And that's something, too. I mean, you get to these games, and we talk about that. So that's another thing we talk about is winning the turnover battle. Yeah. And there's not very many times that I think Antwerp is ever going to lose the turnover battle. So very impressive performance out of the Archers in round 1, I thought. So let's go ahead. Let's move on to the next game here. And AJ kind of referred to it earlier, but we'll look at Liberty Benton at Archbold. And Liberty at Benton honestly kind of shocked us a little bit because we all had Archbold picked, but they won 63-35. And I just don't think Archbold quite rebounded back from that Patrick Henry game 2 weeks ago. And it was another great year for the Blue Streaks, though. If you look at an 8-3 season, many teams and programs view that as successful. But I feel like in Archbold's program, I feel like that still doesn't meet up to their program standards. I mean, if you're at Archbold, you want to be making a regional final berth like every single year. So I was really hoping they would win this to set up the Rocky IV between Archbold and Liberty Center, but maybe another time. So unfortunately, we don't get to see that. But if you look at the passing attack of Patrick Henry or Liberty Benton, that's what won them the game. And I believe Liberty Benton. I'm looking at my notes here. If the passing attack from Patrick Henry when they played Archbold, I definitely think that's a film that Liberty Benton went back and looked at, and they studied that heavily in order to attack the Archbold defense. And I've heard about Liberty Benton's athletes, all year long. You kind of hear a little bit about them because we don't cover them. We don't really hear much media about them at all. They're just a hard team to get because they're further away. But I think they really showed us in this game that they're pretty legit, these athletes, and they can go out there and they can throw the ball pretty well. And quarterback for Liberty Benton, Cam Garlock, was 21 of 29, 72% completion percentage. He had 388 passing yards, 6 passing touchdowns, and he had 13 carries for 71 rushing yards. And then looking at wide receiver, Seth Elkert had 8 receptions for 221 receiving yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. So what were you guys' thoughts about this Liberty Benton and an Archbold game?
I mean, looks like a slugfest. I mean, from just looking at the stats, if you kind of look at everything, it's fairly evened up, but Liberty Benton throws 600 yards of total offense on the board.
That's at Archbold. You go into that venue at Archbold, number 1, and come out just ready to go. And number 2, you put up 603 yards of total offense. That's boy.
Yeah, I mean,
that's hard to believe.
Just looking at it, the rushing attempts were 32-34, and the passing attempts were a little different, 22-12. But that passing attack was where the difference was really. I mean, Archbold won the running game, but Liberty Benton kind of put it to them on the passing side of things. But I'm always the stat guy, and I'm scrolling down. Guess what I looked at, Logan? The third down conversions. Liberty Benton was 9 of 11. Talking about not being able to get off the field. 81% completion, or conversion percentage. That's man. It's again, we talk about it. We've talked about that, week after week. It just you get somebody third down. I don't know how far they were going, but you got them third down, and you can't get off the field. 11 times you had them at third down, and you can't get off the field. Man, that's heartbreaking as a defense.
Yep.
Just
backbreaker, really.
Yeah, it's frustrating. It just, man, we got him stop. We got to make a play, and then they convert. It's like, gosh, dang. But wow.
Yeah, I just can't get over that. 603 yards of total offense at Archibald. That's wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going out there making a statement, especially putting up 63 points on Archibald too, and Archibald still. I mean, they're not a bad team.
No, not at all.
For them to go out there and kind of show what Liberty Benton's about, I just thought that performance was super impressive out of them.
Yeah. I mean, you look at Archibald and their playmakers made plays. I mean, you look at the stats. Cade Brenner threw for 231 yards and 4 touchdowns. Dominic ran for 222 yards and a touchdown. I mean, typically when you look at those kind of stats, you're like, yeah, they kicked somebody's butt, but. Defensively, Archibald obviously just couldn't get Liberty Benton off the field, and we've talked about that 100 times. That if you can keep you got a high-powered offense, keep them off the field.
Yep.
And Archibald couldn't do that, obviously, with the third down conversion attempts, and I guarantee that's the difference of the game right there.
I mean, if you're Coach Dominic, Carson Dominic had 222 total yards, so it's not, it's.
Yeah, like I said, you look like you're doing the right thing, but
at the end of the day, I think that falls on the defense a little bit too. Is 63 points? It's hard to win a game when you give up 63 points to a quality opponent. So, 35 points will get the job done, but at the end of the day, the defense has got to step up, and that's what the saying goes: the defense wins the championship. So,
going into that game, the most points Archibald allowed was 28, and that was against Lake. So
wow,
and that's. I assume a lot of those were probably 28 points were probably late in the fourth quarter points there. I'm just guessing without looking at the box score, but yeah.
Yeah, you look at that, that's might have been a little bit of a shell shock too, coming out, you're down 21-7, bang. It's like, whoa, okay, hang on. And then they come back and they throw up another 21 spot in a second. You're like, whoa, hold on. And then just Archibald never could respond and throw some points up on the board like that.
Yeah, 42 first half points at Archibald. That's really impressive. It really is.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's go ahead. We're going to take our first break to hear from our sponsors, and then we'll be right back.
3Chord is a family-owned and operated business who offers the highest quality embroidery, screen printing, sign, and promotional items to customers of Northwest Ohio at competitive prices. Locations in Archibald, Napoleon, and Bowling Green. Check them out at 3chord.com. That's THREECORD.com. For any of your auto body or collision needs, be sure to check out Bat & Stevens Body Shop, voted the #1 body shop in Northwest Ohio by Crescent News readers. Give them a call today at 419-497-3111 to schedule your free estimate. Check out Tinora Rams Live. Live events broadcast on YouTube and post-game results, articles, schedules, and more can all be found on TinoraRams.com. Feel free to look up their Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram pages as well. Jimenez Basketball Academy strives to create an atmosphere to cultivate basketball fundamentals in Northwest Ohio youth athletes, offering one-on-one sessions, group sessions, speed and agility training, and much more. Located in Pettisville, Ohio, call Coach Jesse today at 419-551-8105.
We're back on the NWO Sports Podcast. Logan Bailey here with Keith Brown, Tony, and AJ Fairchild. So we're going to go ahead, mixing things up for this week's podcast. We're going to look at some predictions, or not predictions, but outlooks on some of the round 2 playoff matchups. So we'll go ahead and we'll start here. Our first one, we're going to look at Division 5, Region 18, and we're looking at Liberty Benton at Liberty Center. And Liberty Benton is 8-3 and the 9 seed in the region, and Liberty Center is the 1 seed, and they are 11-0. This game, I think, is going to be probably one of the better games we see in this region, because I think Liberty Benton's really going to test Liberty Center's secondary, because I don't know that Liberty Center's secondary and even defense has really been challenged by an offense quite like Liberty Benton. We just saw them put up 603 yards of offense and, 60-something points against a good Archibald team, and I don't know, but I'm telling you one thing is this is one game. If you're a fan, you better be showing up, because this one is it's going to be a good one. So what are you guys' thoughts on this upcoming matchup between these two powerhouses?
Go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, this is like as Logan said, this is probably the most potent offense that Liberty Center has seen all season. Just looking at some of their offensive output, they put up 70 twice, 63, 49. Just without seeing any numbers, I'd say they probably average 40, 45 a game
easily.
So, it should be Liberty Center's toughest game so far. It's 2022 season.
Yeah, I mean, Liberty Benton, looking at their schedule, they had a tight win against Leipzig, the tight win against Columbus Grove. But some of the again, I'm looking back here, but some of their their big wins were against like D7 schools. Corey Rawson was 2-8; they won 70-0. So you start breaking down the schedule, start looking at who some of these teams beat. You're like, well, but yeah, I think Liberty. I agree with you 100%, Keith. Liberty Center is going to see a potent offense and similar. I think similar in scale, but obviously better. Probably similar to like Wasion or a PH, maybe.
Not that they're one dimensional, but it seems like their quarterbacks has a lot to do with the offense.
Right.
I guess, like as far as obviously passing, and then he runs majority of the time as well. So
yeah,
I think too, going into this game, it's going to be a lot about. Obviously, we know that Liberty Benton has a very good offense, but I think it's going to come down almost to Liberty Center's offense putting up points and continuing to run the ball and really control the clock and keep the ball out of Liberty Benton's hands. So they don't let them throw up 60, 70 points. Not that I'm saying they would against a very good Liberty Center defense, but you're controlling the game at that point once you keep the ball in your hands and you're really slowing things down. And that's something that Liberty Center has shown to do is they run the ball and they run it well. And honestly, I don't know that there's one team all season long that has stopped Liberty Center from rushing attacks. So
one thing about this game is it's going to be a lot of like coaching strategy here. How do you manage the clock? Like you were saying, how do you manage the clock? How do you keep the other team off the field? When they do get on the field, how do you handle the situation? And it's going to evolve throughout the game. How the game starts, first quarter is going to probably be very different than how the game ends up in the second, third, fourth quarter, because changes are constantly being made. There's a lot of talent on both of these teams, and I think they're going to have to adapt throughout the game. They can't just come in with this is our game scheme, this is how we're going to stick to. It's not going to work that way. You're going to have to kind of adapt throughout the game. So good luck to Liberty Center. I'm pulling for them, and we'll get to that in a little bit, but I love seeing Liberty Center do well. So.
Coach Muller's going to have those guys together over there too. But you kind of we're talking about Liberty Benton's offense. Liberty Center's averaging 38 points, 38.5 points a game. The only two teams that really stopped them was Archbold and Otsego, the two lowest scoring games. Everything else was 30 and above. Liberty Center is no slouch on the offensive side either. And I really do think that Liberty Center's got the more potent defense. And Liberty Benton's going to have their hands full for sure.
I think something too. You're going to see an excellent coaching matchup here. You have the head coach from Liberty Center, Casey Moeller. He's been around the program for years. And then you look at Liberty Benton's head coach, Scott Garlock. This is his second time with Liberty Benton. He's a former Findlay High School and University of Findlay quarterback. And he coached Liberty Benton's football team from 2002 to 2006, and he guided the Eagles to a 47-12 overall record and 4 playoff appearances. And then in 2006, he stepped down after leading Liberty Benton to a Division V state semifinal appearance, which that's pretty good because back in the day, you only had 8 teams per region, and it was a little tougher to make the playoffs. But that's saying a lot. And 47-12 over 4 years, that's a pretty good record. So you're definitely going to see quite the coaching battle between these two excellent head coaches.
So what year was it that Tinora played Liberty Benton at Defiance? Would have been probably 08, 09?
2009, I think.
It would have been shortly after this.
That was my freshman year, so 2009.
Yeah. So that was.
I'm trying to think. Is that when Aaron Kraft was there too?
Yes,
I think so. He was a quarterback.
Yep, Aaron Kraft was there, and that was the year that Tinora went to the spread in the second half, in the fourth quarter actually, and put up 21 points. I think kind of bang, bang. Just couldn't finish it out.
All right, let's look at the next game here we're going to break down. Division 5, Region 18 again. We're looking at the 10 seed Tinora, 8-3 at the number 2 seed Elmwood, 10-1. And we kind of discussed it a little bit earlier, but Elmwood, they're led by head coach Greg Bishop, and they have 3 studs on their offense. You look at running back Mason Oliver. He was a first-team All-Ohio running back last season. You look at wide receiver Mason Mossbarger and quarterback Hayden Wickard. He's a 6'4", 200-pound quarterback that stands tall in the pocket, and he can deliver a ball. So what are you guys' some thoughts going into this game for the Rams and Royals?
Well, I mean, you guys got to see those guys firsthand in the scrimmage this year, and it'll be an interesting contest. We mentioned that I wouldn't want to be Tinora playing Tinora in the first round of the playoffs, and we showed what happens there. So, we mentioned earlier, Tenora's an entirely different team than what they were, a few weeks ago. So, if you take this Tinora team, I mean, honestly, the way they played this past week, if you take this Tinora team and you play them against Antwerp and you play them against Ayersville, you could very easily be looking at a Tinora team as 10-1 right now.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So, I mean, I know Elmwood's good, and like you said, that 6'4" quarterback, he's going to stand back here and sling it, just kind of like Ultimus did. And it's again, guys, it's going to come down to that front four. If we can get some pressure to the quarterback, make him move, make him run, get him outside, make him scramble. I think that's going to be the difference in the game.
I think you hit the nail right on the head, Tony. If you can get Wickard outside the pocket, I mean, as we saw in the scrimmage, like this is probably the most outside of Antwerp, but like a pro style offense. You see which we saw in the scrimmage, like Wickard standing back there was just so impressive. Obviously, it was just a vanilla scrimmage. You're not really going to throw too much out there, but the whole offense was just. It was crisp. It was just it was like your week 6 game. They were just so smooth and like, wow, this is just a scrimmage game, and you could tell they were just building for something special this year. But yeah,
that was something too, like you were talking about with Hayden Wickard, the quarterback for Elmwood. Just seeing him play firsthand, and he is a bigger quarterback. He's just able to stand in there so tall, and he was surgical with his passes. I mean, there was a series that he literally went down the field, completion, all over the field, and it didn't matter what type of throw it was. He was hitting them. He's a quarterback that's going to stand in the pocket. He's going to deliver a pretty ball, and he's not afraid to take a hit in the pocket while he's delivering it. So definitely not one that's going to scramble. I wouldn't think so. But
not much of a runner.
No. But again, even looking at Mason Oliver, he just set the Northern Buckeye Conference, the NBC career rushing record. Mason Mossberger, the wide receiver, set the school record for TD receptions in a season. And then Hayden Wickard, the quarterback for Elmwood, set the school record for most passing yards in a season. So, and just looking at stat-wise, Mason Oliver this season, during the regular season, this is his stats, but he had 151 carries, 1,610 rushing yards, 19 rushing touchdowns. He was averaging 10.88 yards a carry, again, which is another good running back Tinora is going to face for the second week in a row. So I would say I'm not too worried about them stopping the run game because we've seen what they can do against a bigger back and someone who had 2,300 rushing yards and 27 rushing touchdowns. More or less, it's going to be like Tony was saying, if those guys can get pressure on Elmwood's quarterback, I think that's going to be the key difference, because that pressure is going to help that secondary out from Tinora a ton if they can get to the quarterback.
Yeah, as AJ said in the previous matchup, this is one of those games where I think this is probably going to be where Tenora's defense is probably the best defense that Elmwood has seen all year, I'm guessing. But your adjustments either at end of the first quarter or at halftime is probably going to be the difference maker here, because it's kind of going to be like a chess match, really. Your offense versus our defense. Hey, you're going to stuff us. We're going to adjust by throwing the ball all over the field. So if Tinora can, find a happy balance there defensively, I'm really looking forward to this game. Should be one heck of a offensive/defense matchup here.
Yeah, this is one of the first games for Tinora as well, for their defense being tested, that it's been a very multi-dimensional team that they're facing, because, you saw obviously the last week in LCC we had some really good rushing stats. They stopped, they shut down. They played Antwerp, shut down Ultimus quite a while there. It was a pretty tight game, wasn't really letting Ultimus perform the way he usually performs. So when it's a one-dimensional thing on either side, Tenora's been doing very well. I think this is going to be one of the first times they've played a team that has both that they've got to fight against. So, it's going to really come down to how Coach Schliesser and the guys over there adjust on the coaching side of things to to keep the Rams performing on top.
Yeah, as Tony said in the first segment during the game review versus Highland, this is where you can't do the little 5-yard penalties that takes your second and 6. Now it's 2nd and 11 or 2nd and 16. You can't do that this week. It'll kill you.
Yeah, you get that positive first down. You try to stay on the positive side of the chains, kind of as Logan mentioned earlier, and then you make that mistake, and now you're you said, you back it up, and now you're behind the chains again. Yep. You just got to kind of try to stay on the positive side of things as you move along through this game, and it could very easily come down to a turnover too. I mean, it's Tenora's defensive backs have been doing a great job. We haven't. I don't know if our backs have picked off a bunch of passes, but our linebackers have seemed like they've been picking off some passes. But it seems like they're always there. Just hopefully they get their hands on the ball and keep the passes broke up.
Yeah, I mean Graziani and Carter Gilliam, halfway through the year kind of stepped up and stepped into roles that they weren't starters for the most part for half the season, but those two kids have performed great here in the last half of the season.
Job. And I believe Graziani's leading the team with 5 interceptions on defense too, which is more than what I would think.
So I mean it's going to be an interesting matchup, that's for sure. I mean Elmwood's going to be tough. Mason Oliver is going to be hard to stop. Then you got a 6'4" quarterback that's going to be hard to stop too.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at the next game here. Number 13 seed Defiance is traveling to the number 5 seed Mansfield Senior. Defiance is 7-4. Mansfield Senior is 9-2. Looking at this game, I think Defiance. I think they have a pretty good shot at going into this game. You look at how they played and performed against Cloverleaf, and they put up quite an offensive performance. And Broken Castillo was just a beast running the ball.
Yeah.
I think that carries over to this week as well, and. I think if Defiance is going to have a shot at winning this game too, I think they got to be the more disciplined team, and we kind of talked about that too. If you can avoid any kind of penalties, which they were pretty disciplined last week, they were limited just to 5 penalties for 60 yards. That's going to help them out a lot this week. But I'm excited to see this. This is definitely a matchup I think Defiance can win. So what are your guys' thoughts here?
Originally, kind of going into this, I wasn't sure who Mansfield Senior was, that kind of thing. I was looking at some of the games they've played and how they performed, and they've actually performed pretty well, scoring quite a few points in certain games. But Coach Fairchild, being statistics here, looks up the records of the teams they've played, and they've had some games that were blowouts against teams that haven't really done well. Some of the bigger games where they've played really tough opponents, they haven't necessarily performed as well as they should. So I think going in this game, Mansfield Senior being 9-2 isn't really a solid reflection of how they're going to be. They're going to have to play this game just like they would play any other football game and just throw records and stats out the window.
Yeah, that's. I was looking at, and then I looked at Defiance's record, and it's about the same, to be honest with you. But it's going to be an interesting matchup, I think. Again, you would think the bus ride would suck for Defiance, another 2-hour bus ride, and trying to get down there and get loosened up and get warmed up, but didn't seem to bother them last week. So we'll see Defiance is kind of clicking, and we talked about it a little bit ago, just seem to be clicking at the right time, and hopefully they can, like you, AD said, and I'm looking at both records now, because like I said, Defiance is kind of in that same boat, beating all the weaker teams, losing to some of the better teams, but just throw those records out the door and line up and smack each other.
And looking at Mansfield here, they're a pretty balanced team as far as running the ball and passing, averaging passing yards per game 150.7, and rushing yards they're averaging 168.3 per game. So overall about a 50-50 offense pass run. So I think that's something that's more suitable towards Defiance. I know they've faced some teams that have thrown the ball a little bit and may have had a little more difficulty defending the pass. So, I mean, that's something, too, that makes me lean more towards Defiance as well.
It's looking at like the last, say, half of Defiance schedule, they've really only had like once, I guess if you're Coach Cooper, you just call it like a stinker game, where that was that Salina game at home. I think that was our homecoming game even. But even the loss to Wapak, they were 6-2 in their last 8, and like you said, the Salina game, if Coach Cooper have probably like to have that one back. But even when Wapak lost, they lost 15-0, and so they're competitive to Wapakoneta. But yeah, Defiance is definitely playing probably the best ball they played in long time, years, if not decades.
Right. I looked at Mansfield's stats too, Logan, and they're not going to say they're one dimensional, but they throw the ball a lot, they run the ball a lot. They got a lot of guys that carry the ball. It looks like a lot of different people kind of carry the ball. It's like Brown's probably the primary guy. He's got 600 yards, but there's a couple.
I think the one thing too is they don't really have a go-to back. I mean, they do kind of distribute the ball pretty well among quite a few juniors. It looks like there. So that's something that can be kind of more difficult as well as if going into the game, they have one star running back, who you're going to shut down, who you're going to be eyeing on when they're on offense. Yeah. But that can be a little bit of a challenge at times as well. So it's not even like though Brown has the most rushing yards for them, he's only got one rushing touchdown here. So definitely spread the ball around on offense for Mansfield. But I like Defiance chances a lot, I tell you. So I mean, you look at the schedule and Mansfield, some of the games that they played, you would expect them to perform a little bit better as far as scoring margin, and maybe some games that they should have won. They had a tough loss against Massillon, 9-1. Their 9-1 team, they lost that game 0-33, and West Holmes 11-0. They lost that game 7-37. So they really haven't won too big of a game. They have one good win over a Hoover team that was 8-3, and they won that game 42-9. So I definitely think it should be a good ball game.
Absolutely. It'll be an interesting one to watch. Too bad it's not in Defiance.
Right.
Let's look at the next game here. Division 6, Region 22. Looking at the 10 seed, Patrick Henry 7-4 at the number 2 seed, Crestview Ashland 11-0. Again, I think this is one. Patrick Henry is picking up some steam here in the playoffs. I wouldn't necessarily count him out. I know it's a 10 versus 2 seed story, but Patrick Henry and Nash Meyer are playing excellent. Coach Bill Inselman has got things rolling over there, and you look at breaking down Crestview Ashland's schedule here. They do have some good wins against 8-3 St. Paul teams. They got a lot of wins against teams with winning records, but I don't know if they've quite been challenged by a team in Northwest Ohio yet. Even looking, they only beat Wayne Trace 38-0, and you think being a 2 seed, they would blow them out a little bit more than 38-0, but who knows? So what are your thoughts on this game?
Kind of going off of that with Wayne Trace, they were doing fairly well against Crestview going into halftime. I think the score was fairly low at that point. A lot of the points came more in the second half. I was kind of with you on that one. I would have thought Crestview playing Wayne Trace would have put up a lot more points than that.
I never coaching someone out on anything. Right. He's seen it. He's done it all. As Neischmeyer and the receiving crew's playing great. So that's, even though it's they're 10-0 or 11-0 now, but as you guys said, they really don't have like a eye popping win.
And that's something, looking at too, I'm looking at the breakdown of stats and team stats for Crestview Ashland, and they're mostly a running team, and that's something Patrick Henry's seen quite a bit this year, especially being in the NWAL. Yep. So I definitely think they're well versed, and they face some good running backs like your Carson Dominic, you heard Matthew Orr, even Sam Harold. There's a lot of good running backs, Jeremiah Wolford. The list goes on in the NWAL. So I think they're well versed to compete with a team that can run the ball. So I don't know. I think another good game. Like all these games, I don't think there's necessarily going to be a blowout. You're getting into the second round, and there's a reason these teams have all made it into the second round. So, you guys have any other thoughts?
No, I just going through look at the stats again. We don't know much about this team, so I just start looking through the stats, and they're averaging 123 yards a game on the ground or passing. And so they don't throw the ball a bunch. Obviously, like you said, Logan, they're running the ball, and. I think PH is, they're going to put up some points in this team, I believe. I just don't see them, stopping PH. PH is going to throw some points up, and I just want to see who can outscore the other one.
It looks like it's going to be a good weather night again. So weather's not going to affect at least the PH passing game whatsoever, or I guess any passing game around the area. So.
Right.
That's something really, any of these passing teams in the area, they haven't had to face adversity with the cold weather yet. So, I mean, when you throw the ball, your hands get a little numb, especially catching the ball too. I mean, your fingers sting. So really, honestly, I think the coldest game this year has maybe been like 50 degrees. I don't think it's
maybe that was week
I didn't even know.
8-ish, maybe.
Yeah, it would have been. Trying to think,
I think we went to Paulding. It was a little chilly, but it wasn't like bitter cold by any means.
Right.
So if you're looking for November 4th, Friday night, week 2 playoff game, and your daytime temperature is going to be 72 degrees, you kick off probably 60, 62. I mean.
So you guys made the playoff run. There was snow around the edge of the field over at Ohio Northern.
I think there was one game we played, and it was the regional final game at Ohio Northern. It was like negative outside. It was freezing. Because all I remember is there's some girls in my class that got frostbite on their fingers because they weren't wearing any gloves. And that was probably the coldest game I've ever played in. And I believe with the wind chill, it was below 0 degrees out, which that was cold. I don't even know how we played a game. So. Let's go ahead.
Frozen tundra.
Yeah, honestly, it literally was. Let's go to the next game here. Division 6, Region 22. The 5 seed Columbus Grove 9-2 travels to the 4 seed Northwestern 9-2, and I believe Northwestern is in West Salem. You said, AJ?
Yes. Yep.
Which is somewhere over the northeastern corner of Ohio. Going into this game. Another good matchup, a 4 versus 5 matchup. Both teams 9-2. I think they're going to meet up pretty well. But again, this is another game. I like Columbus Grove a lot. Trenton Barraza, the running back for Columbus Grove, has really stepped up over the whole entire season. And again, that linebacker duo of Schaefer and Cook have been unstoppable all year long. And I'm excited to see what they do against a team from outside of the area and really show off their talent. So what are your guys' thoughts on this matchup here?
Should be as you said, Logan, Columbus Grove. I think they're starting to play their best ball right here in the last month. Honestly, I mean, offense is starting to click. This is the time you want to get hot is right now. So, Coach Schaefer definitely has Cougars playing their best ball.
Yeah, I was kind of looking at any common games, see how teams performed against the same opponents. The only opponent they've got in common so far is Black River, which. Northwestern played them fairly early in the season, week 2. They won 29-6. I know that's early in the season, so things change throughout the season, especially with like we were talking with Patrick Henry last game and Columbus Grove in this one, and a couple other teams like Tinora. The second half of the season has been totally different than the beginning. So I know it's hard to say based on that early of a game, but Columbus Grove came out last week against Black River and put up 42 points to their 17. So they put a beating to Black River, so I think they've got it going right now, and I think they're gonna be able to continue that.
Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, I mean Columbus Grove, they lost their Liberty Benton, which we talked about, early in the season, and but I've been looking at Columbus Grove is a lot of their wins are against like Division 7 teams. And to me, when I look at that kind of stuff, it's kind of like, okay, how battle tested are you?
Right.
When it comes down to this stuff, and you're 4 versus 5, you're both 9-2, kind of comparing the records. Like AJ said, they both played Black River. It'll be interesting, but looking at Northwestern, they play a lot of teams in Division 5, Division 6. There's only one Division 7 team in their on their schedule, so way different than what Columbus Grove did. But it'll be interesting. Unfortunately, Columbus Grove's got to take a long trip too.
And I'm just looking at some of the cumulative stats for Columbus Grove in the season. Tad Cook, 109 tackles in the season, 3 sacks, 2 interceptions. He's got 3 pass deflections, a forced fumble. And then A.J. Schaefer, 74 tackles. He's got 5 TFLs, 3 sacks. He's got an interception. But those are some linebackers too that can put the pressure on the quarterback. So that's good to see out of them. But again, I think going into that game, I like Columbus Grove's chances. And they're a team that in the past, and they're historically known to be a good playoff team. And I think they continue that this week. So I'm excited to see this matchup as well.
Yeah, they're definitely battle tested. They're in the playoffs seemingly every year. So
I feel like Columbus Grove too is kind of a program like they're definitely one of the powerhouses in the area, but I feel like it's not one that people always think about because year after year they're making playoffs and they're making noise, and I feel like really, I mean, you think about like teams historically, like Liberty Center,
right.
Archbold, teams like that. But I feel like Columbus Grove is always kind of like an aftersight. But that, honestly, they're just as successful as a lot of these other programs have been.
Most definite.
But yeah, I just thought that was something. I've always thought of Columbus Grove as they're definitely a quality football program over there. Last game here, we're going to look at the prediction or matchup here. Division 7, Region 26, the 10 seed Delphus Jefferson, 7-4, takes on number 2 seed Antwerp, 11-0. And just kind of looking at it, Ayersville could have faced Antwerp if they beat Delphus Jefferson. So would that have been a cool matchup? But anyways, Delphus Jefferson coming off a big win against Ayersville, upsetting Ayersville as Delphus Jefferson was the lower seed. But I think this one, I think Delphus Jefferson got lucky. I'm not going to lie, against Ayersville. And we talked about it too. It's tough to beat a team twice in the same season, but I think Antwerp, being a home game again, they're getting a little taste of medicine from Carson Ultimus, and I think he's throwing up at least another 5 touchdowns this game. So what are your guys' thoughts on this matchup?
I agree with you, what you just said there, Logan. I look at, the Antwerp's just going to go to town, I think, against these guys. I don't think Delphus Jefferson's going to be able to hold with Ultimus. And just looking at Delphus Jefferson's schedule, they did not. Ayersville is really the only quality opponent they've won against. Everybody else is 5-5 or lower. They lost to Ayersville earlier in the season and then beat them in the playoffs. But their wins are against 1-9, 5-5, 4-6, 3-7, 4-6, 1-9. I mean, so. They haven't beat that quality opponent like an Antwerp team. So, and
you look at them when Delphus Jefferson did play a quality opponent. You look at Allen East; they were 10-1. They lost that game 6-62. So I think that says something too about playing. And even with Columbus Grove, they lost that game 38-6, and Columbus Grove was a 9-2 team. So I think it's just one of those things. It was almost I'm not trying to discredit them, but almost like a fluke in a certain sense, just because it is. It's so when you play a team. Like I believe AJ even said it before, their tendencies, what they're going to do. I mean, obviously you can make adjustments, but there's just a different vibe when you play a team a second time, because I feel the momentum almost swings to the other side to even it out. I don't know if it's just some natural equilibrium in the world or whatever, but if it means football teams going 1-1 in a series. So,
well, like I kind of talked about last week, the big reason that I feel the momentum swings in the other team's direction is because, with Ayersville winning with Delphus Jefferson, with Ayersville winning the first game, getting things backwards here, with Ayersville winning that first game, their defensive schemes and offensive play calling and stuff isn't really going to change a whole lot coming into this game because they won. Why would you fix what's not broken, right? So Delphus Jefferson has all of the momentum because they know what changes they can make. Ayersville's got to kind of predict what could Delphus Jefferson really have as a go-to change. So Ayersville's kind of going in blind. Delphus Jefferson knows what they're doing, and that goes with any team that plays a second time. With the Liberty Center Archbold game last year and in the playoffs and things like that. It's hard for those teams to make the adjustments mid-game as opposed to like Delphus Jefferson making those changes all week long. So it's not surprising to see it, but like you said, it may be kind of a fluke. We'll find out this week, but doesn't surprise me to see the tables turn a little bit last week.
Any final comments here?
No, as you guys summed it up, Delphus Jefferson, they're playing well. They won 6 out of the last 7, but as you guys said, they're quality opponents, not really plus 500 level. So not to discredit them by any means, but you're just looking at records and whatnot. So.
All right. Well, let's go ahead. We're going to take a break to hear from our sponsors, and then we'll be back with our call-in and our interview. So we'll be right back.
Fairchild Family Chiropractic aims to help families to get better together in the least invasive way possible. Dr. Fairchild focuses on the neck using the Blair technique and Palmer package, adjusting to correct spinal misalignments. Located in Defiance, Ohio, call Dr. Fairchild today at 419-576-5070 to schedule an appointment. Northwest Ohio Basketball hosts premier basketball tournaments for boys in grades 3 to 8 in the area. Upcoming tournaments are right around the corner. Give them a call today at 419-283-5296 or check out their website at nwoball.com. Crystal Vasquez of Amerimaid Realty is a top real estate agent in Northwest Ohio. Crystal's compassion and enthusiasm allow her to find that special property or house just for you. Located in Bryan, Ohio. Give her a call today at 419-799-1243.
Welcome back to the NWO Sports Podcast, and we're into the call-in section. And today we have Tinora Rams head coach Jeff Schliesser with us, and I want to just congratulate you on the big playoff win last week against Highland.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Boys played their hearts out, and we couldn't be prouder of them.
All right. Question I got for you is your defensive front played phenomenal, especially your defensive line, who helped hold Highland's running back to just 30 rushing yards before the JV came in. What were your thoughts on the defensive effort by your team last week?
We've leaned on our defense all year long. I mean, that was nothing new. They've stood up time and time again, and we put them in some tough situations sometimes. Untimely turnovers. We only had one last week, but that was a big test for them, and they stood up in a big way. If Highland's able to turn around and get points there off of the fumble, we might have a battle on our hands. So, that was nothing new. We kind of expect them week in and week out to do their thing, and they haven't let us in yet.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with you. The defensive players, they just played lights out, and like I said before, I think that's just your heart and soul of the team, is especially once your defense is playing well, I feel like your offense feeds off that too. So that was really good to see, and especially shut down a quality running back, like the Nauman kid from Highland, who had 2,300 rushing yards going into the game, 27 rushing touchdowns, and it almost put Highland in a panic mode, which was great to see from your guys' side of things. So excellent job. Next question I have for you is we've seen over the last few weeks your offense has really improved, and you've been led by quarterback Dominic Graziani. And since the Wayne Trace game, I feel like he's grown exponentially with both his playmaking ability and his IQ. And even in last game, there were just some big ball throws he made the last couple of games, and I just think his IQ for the game, as he keeps his eyes downfield and works through his progressions, that continues to improve. And I also like the play calling has been terrific, as you guys have opened up the playbook a little bit and had some kids step up. What are your thoughts on your offense developing here in the second half of the season?
Yeah, Dom's come a long way, like you said. We knew he was fearless when we threw him out there against Wauseon in the secondary. We knew he'd step up anytime we asked him to. It was just a matter of experience and him seeing things. And we'd seen him in some scrimmages and some 7-on-7s, and always wanted to take the deep ball, which he could get away with against, the JV squads and stuff. But right. Once he got into the varsity, he wasn't seeing things quite as clearly. And once he made that first mistake against the varsity squad, he was double clutching, and he was a little gun shy. And, once you're in the varsity, you can't really play scared. So it was just a matter of getting him some experience. Those first couple of weeks, kind of the same thing. He was running for his life a lot. First, we didn't protect him very well up front. But secondly, against Ayersville, he threw a couple balls to them, and from there, he's a little gun shy. He's double clutching rather than throwing our timing routes on time. But like you said, I mean, these last couple of weeks, he's really, he's starting to look like a varsity quarterback. He's making the right reads. He's seeing things more clearly. He knows what he's looking for. He had one ball sail on him against Highland, but he saw a linebacker dropping back into the window, and we'd like to see him to tuck and run it there, but he tried to put a little more air on it to get it over that guy's head. Instead, it sailed and almost ended up being a pick. But he's played tremendously, and for him to step up once Gavin went down in our time of need, we couldn't ask for a better kid to do it. He's a tremendous athlete. Even when he was running for his life, it just seemed like, there time and time again, you'd think he was down, and then all of a sudden he'd squirt out somewhere, and all of a sudden we've got a big play out of the deal. So, he's been a huge asset stepping up for Gavin. As far as offensively in general, we really haven't done a whole lot different from our bread and butter Tinora offense. We've added a few new wrinkles in, but Moose and I, when we sit down to to get a script figured out for the week, we start back with basics and go back and see what we like from our original stuff, and then try to put a few new wrinkles in each week based on what we're seeing from their defense. But really, it's a lot of the same stuff we've always done. Just our offense is starting to click. Our line's figuring stuff out. We're protecting Dom a little bit better now, and starting to open up some bigger holes for our running backs.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Last question I have for you. The other guys will ask you a couple, but now this week you guys face an Elmwood team, which you guys have faced in your last scrimmage before the regular season started. They have some really good players. Their running back, Mason Oliver, was a first-team All-Ohio running back last season. Wide receiver Mason Maws Mossberger. He's a stud out there on wide receiver. And then you have their quarterback, Hayden Wickard. He's a big 6'4", 200-pound quarterback. What does the matchup look like for this Friday?
Yeah, it's a little bit tougher of a test this Friday. Last Friday, we knew stopping 42 would, as you say, put them in a little bit of a panic mode. We knew they didn't have much else there. This week, you kind of, you're facing 3 or 4-headed monster, and you shut down one weapon, and they've got 2 or 3 more they can hit you with. So definitely going to need all hands on deck. Definitely going to need to lean on our defense a lot again. Defensive front has to work on shutting down the running back and keeping the quarterback contained, and our secondary is going to have to, they're going to have to cover. Even when stuff breaks down for them, it seems like quarterback gets loose for them a lot, and he's always got his eyes downfield. Once he's out of the pocket, even if he's running forward, he's always got his eyes downfield looking to see if he can sling one, and he can sling it. So going to need all hands on deck. Everyone's going to have to play super disciplined. Can't get away with anything. They know they can expose you at any given moment. So going to have to be disciplined and need a lot of people to step up.
Talking to the guys back here, you guys got any questions for Coach Jeff Schliesser?
Hey, Coach, this is Keith.
Hey.
Best luck this Friday night. But what's it like to, even though you don't really utilize them as much as you would like, but have sophomore Jacob Bishop as your field goal kicker?
Yeah, he's been a huge weapon. We knew coming into the year that we've got this special teams weapon, and as far as beyond just him being able to kick field goals, which he's done a phenomenal job lately. First of all, we have to put him in, like you said, put him in position to do that, which we didn't do as much as we wanted early on in the season. And even there were times early in the season where, we could have tried a field goal, but we thought we maybe needed to be a little more aggressive and either go for on fourth or to give ourselves a chance to win. But, lately we've been just trying to put him in position to either open up the scoring or extend the scoring for us. And man, he's been lights out there. But even on the other side, just punting the ball, flipping the field, kickoffs have been huge for us. A couple of years ago against Columbus Grove, if we could have, kicked the ball 10 or 15 more yards down the field and made him, extend the field a little bit on him, we would have been in better shape. It just seemed like that year we were putting on the ground. They had the ball at the 40, even if they had to punt. And, with Veerhoff, he was putting us 80 yards away from our own end zone every time. So we could just never get the field flipped against them. Jacob gives us the chance to flip that field, and he's pinned a bunch of people down inside the 20, 10, and 5. So he's been just a tremendous weapon for us, special teams wise.
Last question I have for you, Coach. What's it like being an alum and actually coaching the team that you played for?
Well, obviously the situation wasn't ideal. I didn't ask for it. I didn't necessarily want it, but happy to be able to put in this position to help these guys finish out their season. And they've stepped up and helped me out just as much. We were all put in a tough situation, and everyone's responded admirably as far as I'm concerned. Couldn't have hoped for their end here, and hoping to just extend it one game at a time and keep this thing rolling. So as far as being an alum, that's kind of what you get into it for. You come back to help out a little bit and see what you can make happen, who you can help out in a little way. And, now it's ended up being in a much bigger way than I initially planned.
Hey, Jeff, this is Tony. Hey, like Keith said, congratulations on that win. That was awesome. And we kind of joked around. I heard about the banner that they had hanging there about we talked last night with Coach Keim about the Highlands banner that they had there. Kind of motivated you guys a little bit. But one thing that I want to talk about is, you mentioned, kind of touched on, getting thrust into the position that you've got this, in the middle of the season like that. And then, trying to scramble and pick things up and get things moving forward. How did that, what was your plan? Just kind of getting thrown into that. Initially,
we were just hoping to, keep everything together and try to keep our traditions alive. We wanted the kids to stick around and stick out this season. It's a short season. Football's a short season. You get 10 games. So you don't want to see anyone walk away halfway through the season. So we knew if we stuck around that they would stick around. And, we were just trying to keep everything as normal as possible. Coach Krause and Coach H had laid a great foundation at Tinora. we didn't want to change anything. We didn't make any wholesale changes. Our practices are still run almost identical to how they were. Our weekend, our preps, everything is run the same. Our pregame is run the same. We've tried to keep everything as close to possible as we can. And, Tenora's got a great tradition of being successful on the football field. And that's a testament to those before us. We were just trying to uphold that for them.
Well, I want to commend you guys. I think you guys have done a great job, from the Ayersville game forward. Maybe the Ayersville game, you guys looked like you were just trying to get your feet on top of the ground there a little bit, and maybe working through the mud, trying to straighten things out. But you guys have done a fantastic job getting things straightened around, and this team has just, in my opinion, is come kind of tenfold. It's an entirely different ball club than it was, back week 3 and 4 even. And, we mentioned it on this podcast, and I'm pretty sure you guys listen to it, at least some of the guys do. But, we've talked about, this team is – nobody wanted to play this team coming around the first round of the playoffs, and you guys definitely showed that we were right on that aspect, because you guys just came out and stomped Highland from the word go. But the one thing that I want to bring up is the one thing we talked about. The only thing that you could change in the game was penalties, and you guys had a lot of penalties. Not really a question, but I just hope you guys are working on the offsides penalties and the false start penalties, because we talked about that a couple times. That could have been detrimental for us last week.
Yeah, the false starts was a little, I don't want to say uncharacteristic. We've had trouble stalling our own drives with penalties this year so far, but it seemed like we had cleaned it up a little bit. But I'm sure most of the time every time we motioned out there, I'm sure someone on their side was yelling motion, which we do in practice every day. So just a couple jitters, and then Will Newman rolled his ankle pretty bad in the game, and he gutted out for a long time. And one of the late ones was a replacement coming in for him who had jumped. But
right.
Yeah, definitely have been harping on the guys about when motion's coming. You have to settle in and know you're going to hear some noise before the actual cadence. You got to know your own quarterback's voice, and so we definitely harped on them a little bit during film, but. That comes down to them in the actual game situation. Not much we can do once they're out there on the field.
Right. Again, you guys have done a great job. I'm excited to see you guys play again this week.
Thank you.
This is AJ here. Actually, Coach Tony just asked us the question I was going to ask about the penalties and cleaning things up a little bit. But the only thing I've got for you is just saying good luck this weekend and continue to do things that Tinora does.
Thank you. Appreciate it, AJ.
I got one more question for you, Coach. Was that the most entertaining 2.5 bus ride home that you've probably ever had?
Actually, it was kind of boring for me. I was driving the equipment truck all by myself, I was all alone.
Oh, no.
I had to stop in Finley for some gas, but other than that, it was a lot of me just trying to find a good radio station to keep my eyes open.
Well, maybe you could pop in the podcast and listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
All right, Coach. Well, that's all we got here. We just want to all wish you good luck this Friday, and we'll be rooting you on. So, again, keep up the good work, and hopefully you come out with a win Friday.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Hey, good luck, Coach.
Take care.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Well, that was Coach Jeff Schliesser from Tinora, and good to hear him talk, and he's doing some good things over there. So,
yeah, absolutely. Those like I said, those coaches have done a great job kind of picking up this mess in the middle and kind of going right along with Coach Inselman, what Inselman said last week, of changing things up versus, with the players that you have, and these guys doing literally just the opposite, not changing anything, trying to keep everything as the same, as close to the normal as possible, and just letting the Ram football continue. And like he said, the Rams, we have a great tradition of good football teams at Tinora, and like he said, Coach Krause started that tradition, doing a great job, and Coach H has been there forever and doing a great job defensively, and just trying to keep that tradition rolling and not changing a whole lot. It was a great game plan, and all those coaches getting together and figuring it out has been pretty awesome to watch.
Excellent job of the whole, honestly, team and coaching staff for them to respond how they have, and they're doing big things. So I'm excited for this Friday.
Definitely. Looking forward to it.
All right. Well, we don't have any hot takes for this week because as we were kind of discussing that once you get this late in the season, you kind of run out of hot takes because everything's set in stone. So
nobody wants to see us do an Oklahoma drill anymore.
Yeah, we had a couple of ones like that, but it's honestly, you kind of know where things are playing. So That's why we'll still do the call-ins, but we'll go right into the playoffs round 2 game predictions. So let's go ahead. We'll look into that. Let's look at the first game here. We'll look at Liberty Benton, 8-3 at Liberty Center. And all these games we kind of discussed already, so you kind of know where we're leaning or a little bit of an insight on what's to come. But again, this game's at Liberty Center. I think they get the job done. I'm going Liberty Center, and I definitely think it's a good one. And this is going to be the NWO Sports Game of the Week, so I would definitely go to this game if you're available Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about this time of year. When you progress through the playoffs, you start to see jackets from other schools. Yeah. Their team also travels, they just pile a bunch of kids in a few cars, and you see a bunch of Hicksville kids sitting in one area, then Fairview. But this game here is going to have kids who aren't active in the playoffs from everywhere.
I would have to bet you're going to see some Archbold jackets sitting in the stands for this game.
This will be another full house over there. The weather's supposed to be great, so and they do a fantastic job over there at Liberty Center. Like the entire operation is just first class. So, but man, taking the Tigers, but this should be an entertaining game.
Liberty Center.
Yeah, my pick's Liberty Center, and I agree with Keith. You're going to start seeing, and we can talk about this in a little bit, but get out and watching some games. But my pick's Liberty Center.
And Bryce had Liberty Center. So Liberty Center across the board from all of us. Looking at the next game, Defiance 7-4 at Mansfield Senior 9-2. And I really, really like the way the Bulldogs are playing right now. And I think they're going to come into Friday night with, again, an attitude like they just don't care. And they're going to come in like a wrecking ball and just make some noise in round 2 of the playoffs. So I'm going Defiance. I think they pull it off. And I'll be glad to see, hopefully, Defiance pull off another win.
Yep. For me, this is one of those swing games. I got to kind of catch up somehow on AJ. So I'm definitely pulling for Coach Cooper and the Bulldogs, but my heart tells me Mansfield Senior.
I kind of talked about this a little bit ago. I was kind of leaning Mansfield Senior, but Coach Fairchild over here kind of pointed some holes into my philosophy there on why I was picking them, and I do want to see Defiance continue their streak this year. They're doing fantastic. I want to see them do it some more. So I'm going to go ahead and go with Defiance.
Yeah, I'm going to take Defiance. I agree with Keith. They're playing well right now, and hopefully they can keep that ball rolling.
And Bryce had Mansfield Senior, so pretty split on that game. Again, another quality game in the area. Let's look at the next game. Tinora 8-3 at Elmwood 10-1. This is another game. We saw what Tinora is capable of last game. Their offense keeps improving week after week. Defense was lights out last game. Really shutting down the quality running back from Highland. I'm going to go the Rambos on this one. I think they pull it off. The momentum's really in their favor right now. They've already seen them in the scrimmage earlier this season, so they kind of know what they're getting their hands into. And again, I think Tinora is going to pull this one out. I'm going Tinora.
Yeah, it's another swing game for me. I'm wearing the Tinora football sweatshirt for crying out loud. But this is probably we played Antwerp earlier in the year, who's got a potent offense. But I'm going to this personally is probably the most high-powered offense the Rams have played since the 2020 Columbus Grove offense.
I would say most complete, too.
Yes, right. I mean, you got Oliver, Mossgrove, and Wickert, the three-headed monster. Rams defense, this is a fantastic matchup of a defense that's probably playing as good in the area as any defense and an offense that's playing as good as any offense in the area. So it's kind of like the old Monday Night Football where the two helmets are going together. They collide and just cotton balls fly everywhere. This is kind of what that matchup is. It's either going to be just a grind out, old fashioned, this is where Jacob Bishop really could come into play. It could be like a 17-14 game. And if the Rams do get behind, it just could snowball because Tinora is not a catch-up offense as they are right now. It's, you kind of got to play time of possession and keep the ball away from Elmwood. So taking Elmwood.
Yeah, I kind of liken this game a lot to the week 1 against Liberty Center and Tinora, and I know that was a very young Tinora team, a very underdeveloped Tinora team, but I think even if you went back and played that game again, I think Liberty Center has just got too much going for them, and I think Elmwood kind of falls in that category. I think Elmwood's just got too much on both sides of the ball. Elmwood's defense is going to be pretty good as well. They're a top-notch team on both sides, but I think their offense is just going to be that one team that's going to overpower their defense. Yep. So I'm going with Elmwood.
Well, I'm going with Tinora. I think I agree with you, Keith. I think it's going to come down close. I've been looking at Elmwood's schedule, and Elmwood gives up some points. And like we mentioned, Tinora's offense is really starting to, we mentioned earlier, the whole sputter thing. It's not really sputtering anymore. They look good right now. And I think this very well could come down to a Jacob Bishop field goal, like you said. It'll be interesting. But, Coach Schliesser kind of mentioned it. We got to keep him contained and going. But my pick is the Rams.
And Bryce had the Rams too, so pretty split on that decision. And I don't know, maybe Keith and AJ are just copying each other, trying to stay in place.
No. But AJ went with Defiance, so he broke out there.
So, I got another one that's different here coming up too.
Let's look at the next game. Patrick Henry 7-4 at Crestview Ashland 11-0. Looking at this game, we talked about it. Patrick Henry's on a roll right now. They're coming off some big wins, and their passing attack is probably one of the better in the area, especially with Nash Meyer slinging the ball. He's doing an excellent job. They have some really talented wide receivers there on the outside. I think this is a close game. I was kind of back and forth between which team I wanted to go with, but I think at the end of the day, I'm going to go with Crestview Ashland. I mean, they're 11-0 in the season. They've kind of blown out a lot of teams, but I think they're just going to be too much for Patrick Henry. But I wouldn't count them out. Patrick Henry may have a shot going into the fourth quarter. But I'm going Crestview Ashland.
Yeah, I took Crestview Ashland as well. This is one of those where like the home crowd actually could have a little bit to do with the outcome. I mean, not much, but got a long bus ride. Plus, they're playing at home, and this time of year it helps out quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Crestview Ashland as well.
Yeah, I'm. As I'm sitting here and I'm kind of thinking through it. I mean, I had to go back really quick and look, but man, PH is they're playing really well. They beat Delta, 40-8. Then they come in and they beat an 8-3 Archbold team. And now they knocked off an 8-2 Ottawa Hills team. I don't know. I think I'm gonna stick with Crestview Ashland.
And Bryce had Crestview Ashland. I mean, a lot of these games too. I mean, you get deeper and deeper to the playoffs. It's hard to decide who's going to win.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, you literally throw the records out the window because it just depends on who's playing at that time and because like we talked about, it depends on who you beat. You get a bunch of wins against teams that would losing records. Oh yeah, you're 10-1, but who did you really beat? Mm-hmm. Man, that's a good one.
Let's look up the next game. Van Wert 10-1 at Sandusky. Perkins 10-1. And looking at this side by side, they're two pretty evenly matched up teams. But again, I think Van Wert. I think maybe that loss they had to Wapakoneta earlier in the year did them some good. I think it maybe kind of made them rethink things and made them realize that they're beatable, because sometimes they feel like going into the playoffs, and if you are undefeated, you kind of almost get too big of a head going into it, is what I want to say. But I like Antwerp a lot. They have one of probably the best quarterbacks in the state, honestly, I think. I like Van Wert a lot. I think they're going to end up winning this one. So
yeah, they're one of the more the complete teams as far as offense, defense in the area. So taking the Cougars.
Van Wert.
Van Wert for me. The only thing that scares me a little bit is they're on the road. So, but it'll be an interesting game, and I think Van Wert's got enough weapons that they can take this game.
And Bryce had Van Wert too, but I think this is a big game for Aiden Pratt, and I think he solidifies why he's probably one of the best, if not the best, quarterback in Northwest Ohio. Next game, Delphus Jefferson 7-4 at Antwerp 11-0, and this one I don't think this one's close, to be honest. I think being at Antwerp is a quality team. I think Delphus Jefferson got away with one at Ayersville, but I don't think they get away with this one. I'm taking Coach Hale and the Archers.
I'm right with you, Logan. Taking Coach Hale and the Archers should win by three scores, I would say, at least.
Yeah, I was going to say 3 scores, somewhere in that ballpark at least. So I'm going with Antwerp.
And Antwerp for me.
And Bryce had Antwerp as well. So Antwerp across the board. Last 11-man game here. Columbus Grove 9-2 at Northwestern 9-2. This is another longer bus ride for Columbus Grove, but I looked. Columbus Grove's faced some tougher teams in the area. They took a couple losses earlier in the season, but they've been hot the second half. I really like Trenton Barraza running the ball at running back. I like the linebacker duo there. I don't know. I think it's going to come down if Renner, their quarterback, can play a quality game, not turn the ball over, and at least move the ball a little bit down the field, maybe throw for 100 passing yards. I think that will really help Columbus Grove Bulldogs' chances. But nonetheless, I'm going Columbus Grove, and I think they pull this one out.
Yeah, this is one of those swing games for me. I took Northwestern.
Keith trying to get one up back on.
Trying to get one back somehow.
I'm going Columbus Grove on this one.
You guys are end up splitting. AT's going to win Defiance.
Right.
Keith's going to win Northwestern. Stay the same.
Yep.
I don't know. I look at these games and I'm like, I put my pick in. Then I go back and I start looking at some stuff and I'm just like, man. But you know what? I'm going to go with Keith and I'm going to go with Northwestern on this one.
And Bryce had Columbus Grove, so we were split again on that game. So another good game on the slate. Last game here, it's the 8-man championship game, and that's actually Holgate at Toledo Christian, 6-3 at 8-1. I think again these two have faced earlier in the season. I think Toledo Christian's just going to be too much. They got a very senior-led team. I think they're gonna handle Holgate pretty easily. Rumor was, I don't know if they're playing in Bowling Green.
I think it's at Bowling Green. Yes.
Is it at the high school or college?
I'm not sure.
That's what I thought I heard. So
it is at Bowling Green. I'm not sure the venue though.
But yeah, that's something I heard as well. But
it'd be neat to play on the
at BGSU. Heck yeah,
it'd be pretty cool. But I think Toledo Christian wins this one. I think they win pretty big. But Holgate has had a tremendous year. It was exciting to see them progress throughout. But I mean, I hope they win. But I think Toledo Christian's going to be a little too much for them.
It's at Bowling Green High School.
Okay,
but not that really matters. But yeah, it's nice that they actually have a postseason tournament. It's a conference tournament. It's not like a state.
Yes.
It's not a state-held tournament yet, but it is a conference tournament. But it's exciting for your 8-man schools. But Toledo Christian should win this one.
Yeah, I think Toledo Christian's got it.
Yeah, I watched they had the Toledo Christian striker game on TV.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Wow, did they?
Yeah,
awesome.
It was on. I was watching it the other day, and I watched just a little bit of it. But I didn't realize that the field's smaller.
Yeah,
so they bring the sidelines in.
They told me the width of the field is smaller, which I never knew that. Till
I didn't realize that until they showed. I think Toledo Christian was going for a touchdown, and they had the cones in. I'm like, what? I realized I was like, wait a minute, that's okay. So it kind of makes some sense. But anyway, my pick is Toledo Christian. I watched a little bit of that striker game, and they handled striker pretty well. So I think Toledo Christian.
Awesome.
And Bryce had Toledo Christian. So Toledo Christian from all of us. Well, that was our last segment, and we're on to our closing thoughts. What are you guys' closing thoughts going into round 2 of the playoffs?
Well, as I started to say earlier, and just until we get back to it, your team might be done. But there's a lot of good games going on, and hopefully, if you're looking for something close, I mean, Antwerp's right there, so go watch Antwerp play, and or go watch Liberty Center. It might be hard to get a ticket for the Liberty Center game, but go to Antwerp and watch a game, and just it's that time of year. It's when are you typically going to get to watch a round 2 playoff game? Probably 60-degree weather,
Never.
game time, so get out and support the kids and just go watch some football. There should be some good games this weekend. And, we talk about that all the time and just.
Yep. Going off what Tony said. Yeah. Just take the kid. We said this about every week. And this week, especially, like the atmosphere is going to be so charged and electric. You got the bands playing pregame and, trying to get both sides going. And it's just the playoff atmosphere is so much different than the regular season atmosphere. You may have a big game like Tinora Ayersville where it's similar, but your playoff atmosphere, there's just nothing like it. There isn't.
Yeah. I tell you what, though, I would love to see a school, in particular Liberty Center, play Enter Sandman and have that stadium and that venue bumping. Oh, that would be awesome.
Could you imagine seeing those kids come out of that big field house they've got there?
Oh, I know.
Run on the field to that. That would be.
That'd be quite the entrance.
After the national anthem.
Yeah.
Don't kill it.
Yes.
The only other thing you could do that I've been watching a lot of the college games and night games that they do. Now they've got their lights hooked up that they flash and do all this stuff. I mean, if you really wanted to have the venue in high school is, do some of that stuff. And I mean, I love the band and, but playing the fight song coming out, even Ohio State doesn't do that. I mean, they play some, they get hyped up, play some music, and they don't play the band on their way out the field. At least maybe you don't hear them. I don't know. But, it's just, it would be awesome to see that But again, like you guys mentioned earlier, you go to these games, playoff games, you start seeing, kids with Fairview jackets at the Tinora game, and I'm sure probably there'll be some Fairview kids at the the Antwerp game. And that's great that you see the conferences. Like AJ mentioned, Archibald some people might be at the Liberty Center game, just supporting the conference. Your opponent during the season, but then as they start making a playoff run, then everybody kind of jumps on board with that.
And the nice thing too, looking into round 3, they'll start being at neutral sites, but we have so many venues in the area that can host. Like Defiance usually hosts, Napoleon usually hosts. Honestly, now Liberty Center will probably host a game. As far as being a venue, typically they're schools with turf. So we have 3 right now in the area that could all be candidates for hosting. So
I want to bring up something that I brought up earlier in the season, that if Antwerp wins, do you think the neutral site's Defiance? I don't know who they'd end up playing, but isn't that what I said earlier in the season? Defiance will host a playoff game. It'll be a Division 7 game.
It could be.
Yeah.
Sorry, Defiance. I'm just picking on you. Just picking on you guys. I hope you guys win. You can host your own playoff game, man.
Yeah. That was, I was trying to look real quick.
Possibility.
I don't know who they'd end up playing.
Region 26, right?
Yeah, that'd actually be kind of funny to see Defiance win, make it to the next round and play at a neutral site. They wouldn't be playing at Defiance, so they have to play somewhere else, but they could end up having Antwerp playing at a neutral site at Defiance.
Right.
So they would have a game, but it wouldn't be their own game.
They play the winner. If they win, they would play the winner of Waynesfield, Goshen, and Gibsonburg.
It won't be Defiance.
No, that'd be somewhere east.
Probably Finley, I would guess, if they play Gibsonburg.
Finley or Tiffin or something like that.
Waynesfield, Goshen, Waynesfield, Goshen, that's south, isn't it?
Couldn't
Isn't it down around Lima area?
I don't know. We're going to have to look at the state of Ohio map and find where some of these schools are. So
I think, if I remember right, I think Waynesfield, Goshen is like south of Lima, if I remember right. I should look. Yeah, I should look it up since we're just kind of talking.
Yeah, I don't know, but nonetheless, get out, support the schools. There's no excuse. The weather's going to be perfect.
Yeah,
so
it's a little bit south of Lima.
Yep.
So I don't know. Maybe it could be somewhere. But all right. Well, we'll quit shooting the word around. Let's go ahead. We'd like to thank all of our sponsors: 3 Chord, Baton Stevens Body Shop, Tinora Rams Live, Jimenez Basketball Academy, Fairchild Family Chiropractic, NWO Basketball, and Crystal Vasquez of Amerimaid Realty. We would like to give a special thanks to Jeff Batt for allowing us to use his amazing new facility at Baton Stevens Body Shop for today's podcast and future podcasts. Again, stay tuned for the new NWO Sports Podcast in the near future. So thanks for watching, and get out there and support this one.